what is up, and welcome to another edition Across the Pitch with myself, Dave Miller, and Mike Barrera. Obviously, we've got lots and lots to dive into. Obviously, the Union are literally just a couple of days off their frustrating loss to Minnesota, which we'll dive into in a little bit, which obviously me and Mike were both pretty pissed off during the game and after the game. We'll look at Jim Curtin's press conference today because it's been a relatively quiet week in general. Even before the Minnesota game, not much had happened. And then, obviously, the huge game, probably the biggest game of the season in terms of the MLS. Obviously, you'd probably say the CONCACAF Champions League goes above everything else. But obviously, probably the biggest game of the season so far for the Union in the MLS, which could have huge ramifications in terms of where they are in the playoffs, what they could do. So obviously, we'll go into that and sort of, just speak about just how big of a game it is. Obviously, Mike, it's been, I think, our last show was last Saturday after the game, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. It feels like it's been a while since we've done a show.
Yeah.
But we
It's a
run a
weird
couple
one.
minutes late, but we want to get right into it. Talk
Oh, yeah.
talk what was probably one of the most stressful losses of the season. Probably one of the most frustrating for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, at this point, we had to just kind of close the door on it. It happened. It sucked. Let's move forward and
Move on
go
to the
from
next one
there.
and try. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Go ahead,
But,
Dave.
I mean, obviously, I was going to say, as you said, obviously, you've got to move on and look towards the next one. I don't know if it's worth doing things in chronological order. We look at Minnesota, then we look at Jim's press conference, because I sort of feel like, I think we'll start off with the game on Wednesday night. I think that's probably the perfect place to go. Obviously, the Union went to Minnesota.
Yep.
Lost 3-2. Were a goal down. Went 2-1 up. And I'll tell you what, I won't lie to you. I don't think Minnesota really did anything to cause the Union any issues, bar the
No.
3 mistakes. It's like the Union, that's one of the more comfortable road games the Union have had all season. And for them to be undone by 3 mistakes, I think the third one is just poor communication. I think
Yep.
either Glesnes has got to say it's mine, or Kai's just got to go in. And obviously, Kai's got to tell him it's his. I think they both go for the ball. I think you can that's probably the least. When you look at it in game, it's probably the most frustrating one. But I think when you then take a step back and look at the situation, it's probably the least frustrating goal of the 3. But I mean, like, just to go into that game, and obviously everyone knew how huge the ramifications of that game were. If they were to win, they've pretty much all but lock up their playoff spot.
Mm-hmm.
So even if they lost to Nashville, the pressure's off in a sense. You're going to get 3rd, 4th, or 5th seed anyway. But it was just such a frustrating way to lose the game.
Well, you think about it this way from the point standpoint. So Nashville and Columbus tied this on the same night. So if the Union had pulled out the win, they would have at least climbed 2 points closer to them than they are now. So
Yeah.
currently they're 3 points behind them because of the win totals. If the Union win on Saturday night, they do claim second place in the Eastern Conference. But just imagine how much easier it would have been if you had at least if you had at least gone into Saturday night knowing, well, even if I don't win this match and we just draw, I'm still within striking distance of
Yeah.
Nashville. But now you have 3 games left. You have Nashville, Toronto, and Cincinnati.
And
And
NYCFC, isn't it?
oh yes, I'm sorry, and NYCFC, right? So 4 matches left. And it's just far more stressful than it has to be,
Yeah.
especially with that last game likely being something that you may lose, considering you're going to New York City for that one.
Yeah. I think,
So, it's and right here. Eric, one of our frequent followers, says, frustrating is an understatement. The Union love to make it difficult every time around this year. Saturday's a must win. I think you're absolutely right. If you want to be a contender and say to the other teams in the league, I am a force to be reckoned with, you need to win at home against Nashville, which is very difficult because they just don't lose very often, to say the least. But I mean, regardless, we had a press conference today, Dave. You were able to sit on it. What was the recap of the press conference?
I think all in all, again, Jim seemed very, very keen to not skip past the Minnesota game, but just to move on and look
Yeah.
ahead to the bigger picture, which is obviously Saturday. Obviously, he came into it and he just sort of said, like, again, they got to put it behind them and got to put things right. Essentially, I think it's going to be up to the same players that cost them the mistakes. Because being realistic, all 3 players that made the mistakes are players that are going to start. So I think again it's up to Jim for them to essentially tell these guys, look, you guys messed things up. You guys go out and rectify it and help us get 3 points in the huge game against Nashville on Saturday. And obviously, I think the bigger news within all, obviously, the press conference, a lot was said. But what's it called? But for Jim to come out and say, obviously, Andre Blake didn't look 110%. Obviously,
Yeah.
I think that was quite evident for everyone to see.
He didn't
Jim's
take any goal kicks, I think. I think he might have taken
no,
one goal kick the entire night.
I think what's it called? He's going to be 100% according to Jim. He should be 100% fit, and Sergio Santos will be back in the matchday squad.
Yep.
But Jim's obviously, you know how Jim's a bit playful, saying like he's going to keep the ace up his sleeve just to see what keep Nashville on their toes as to whether he starts the game or not. Regarding Cory Burke, he's still out for this week, but they're hoping, fingers crossed, they can get him back for next week for the final sort of run-in of the season, heading into the playoffs. So at least he's going to get some match minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think obviously on the injury front, I think that's probably the best thing you could hope for, really, to have those three guys. Well, to obviously have Andre 100%,
Yeah.
Sergio back available, to have Cory Burke essentially guaranteed minutes if Jim plays him heading
Well,
into the playoffs.
there's a couple issues here. So for one, some good news for Nashville. If I remember correctly, excuse me, Hani Mokhtar is going to be suspended for this match with yellow
Yeah,
card
it's huge. Yeah,
simulation. So that is it. Yeah, right. Okay.
yeah, it's
So
huge.
that's a huge thing for the Union right there. Second, and I'm going to go back to the Union schedule real quick. So bear with me 1 second. We've heard from Jim Curtin before in the press conference that Sergio's health, especially when it's 3 matches within a week, becomes a significant issue, which is the reason why you saw him taken out of the one match. What was it? Was it an away match somewhere a couple
Was it?
weeks ago? Sergio got taken out instead of Casper, and the big question was, why is he getting taken out of the match? And
Yeah,
Jim said in the press conference it's because of his health concerns. So you look at the schedule. You have Saturday, the 23rd at 7:30 p.m. against Nashville. Then you have Wednesday, the 27th, at Toronto. Then you have Sunday, the 31st, in Philadelphia for Cincinnati. So you have 3 matches within 8 calendar days, and then you have the November 7th game a week later. So you do get a
yeah,
week break, but you have to assume if Santos plays this Saturday, he's likely going to get limited minutes in either Cincinnati or in Toronto, because
yeah.
as Jim mentioned, for one, he's coming off injury. Two, his body and his line of his historical line of work with his body means that he's probably going to get hurt again if they overwork him. So you may not see a lot of Sergio besides Nashville
No, yeah.
until NYCFC, which I think they need him more than anything in that match.
I think
And then
obviously, I
yeah,
was
go
going
ahead.
to quickly pipe in. Obviously, I think the NYCFC match could actually mean nothing. I mean, on the basis of things, if the Union can win the next 3 games, they should. I mean, they could have the second seed locked up, or
Yeah,
they should have at least a playoff seed locked up to the point where it's sort of like we can only come third or fourth, which is sort of a toss up. It doesn't really matter. But I think obviously, well, we're all looking at second place. We
hmm
have to come second, but let's not forget NYCFC are only 5 points behind with 4 games to go. So I mean, if the Union go into this game and lose to Toronto, NYCFC get 4 points from the next 2 games, then it's sort of like squeaky bum time because their run-ins are a lot more favourable than the Union's. Really, I think obviously they play into Miami on the road, which is probably the equivalent of going to Toronto. They
I,
host
I was going to
Chicago.
say yeah, it's about the same.
Host Chicago again, it's the same. And I think obviously the DC United game at home for them is probably a lot easier in comparison to having to host a gritty team like Nashville who don't concede goals and don't really lose games.
No, Nashville doesn't lose games. And if I'm looking at the table right now,
Okay.
they are currently 11, 16, and 3. They have 16 draws under the belt,
Yeah.
which is just
So,
absurd. The next closest draw total is actually the Union in Orlando and Atlanta with 10 draws.
yeah.
And across even the other conference, the next highest draw total is 12 from Houston. So
Yeah.
they just don't lose. I know they're a
No.
keeper, and his name is escaped me right now. I know he's up there in terms of clean sheets on the year, which makes sense considering how many times they've at least drawn. Maybe 0-0 draws are a factor there for that total for him. But this weekend, I can see Nashville just kind of staying back and crowding the box and preventing the Union from doing any sort of damage, which we saw a little bit against Minnesota. As soon as the red card came, Minnesota just backed up and made very difficult for the Union to
Yeah.
score. So that's my biggest concern is that they don't try to win. They just try to leave Philadelphia with a draw.
Yeah, and
Um,
I think again, as you said, that's something that the Union have struggled with all year. When they've
yeah,
had to, they've had to come up big and they've had to take control of a game. They haven't been able to do so. Obviously, we saw it against Chicago and they played against 10 men, couldn't break them down. Montreal, they couldn't break them down till late on and were lucky to probably get a point. Do you know what I mean? These are sort of games that the Union at home, especially, have struggled in. Um, obviously, it was obviously I want to go back to the Minnesota game. Obviously, we haven't really been able to dive into it.
yeah.
But I mean,
Let's discuss it. Yeah,
I think, as you said, obviously it links into, as you mentioned, like Nashville are going to be a team. They're going to come into Philadelphia. They're going to
Mhm.
sit. They're going to crowd the box. They're going to hit the Union on the counter attack, or they're going to show little attacking intent. And that was sort of what the Union had to face against Minnesota on, obviously, with the final 10-15 minutes against 10 men. And honestly, that was probably the worst the Union played in a tackle game. They didn't have didn't actually have a shot where the goalkeeper actually um, had to make a save in those last 10-15 minutes. The keeper didn't have to make a save. I think the only shot really at goal was Kai's one that got blocked and sort of ricocheted around. That was the only shot they had. And I
yeah.
think again it was just
I know Gasdak had a header opportunity for his third goal, but it ended up going a little
yeah,
too far to left. And Eric makes a point where they were a bit more aggressive offensively, but he's right. They just couldn't finish. And what you hope with when you have a man advantage is that you do get to finish. And that's
yeah,
if you're going to have that energy when you're up a man or when the defense is parked, great. That's eventually you will break through. Maybe the Union just didn't have enough time to do so.
no,
But there was a lot of questions there with whether Jim was bringing the subs in early enough. I know he brought in McGlynn, Brendan Aronson. Oh my God, I'm sorry, not Brendan. Paxton Aronson, and Fontana, and it
yeah,
was all for defensive, offensive switches. So Flock came out, Mbaizo came out, and Martinez came out, which is three you don't typically see come out.
no,
But a lot of fans wanted to see them do that as soon as the third goal went through. Which,
no, yeah.
knowing Jim isn't going to happen, I'm actually surprised Fontana even got some minutes towards
Minutes,
the
yeah,
end. But the three, I think what was most frustrating with this team is that they actually played well against Minnesota
oh yeah,
as a whole. I thought they played fine. The problem was the mental errors that they kept doing, and the mental errors that we've seen now across the entire season. We saw it against Orlando. We saw it against Montreal to start the year. We saw it at the end of the Montreal game this past weekend. These mental errors, or even the Chicago game and how they couldn't mark anybody in the box. These mental errors continue to plague this team. And you just basically every match you're just waiting for that moment. Is it going to be now? Is it going to be Kai? Is it going to be Mbaizo? Who's going to make that mental mistake? The
yeah.
first mental mistake was from your best friend and your favorite player on this team, Jose Martinez, when he was outside of the box dancing around. What did you think when you
Again,
saw?
it just goes back to the point that he's not a defensive holding midfielder. He's an eight. He's a guy that is again. It's that just was more proof that Jose Martinez should be playing higher at the pitch. The fact that he's willing to take these risks, he's more casual on the edge of the box. But really, you'd rather have a player like Leon Flack who's going to get the ball and he's going to get rid of it straight away, or he's going to keep it simple. He's not going to take the mick. He's not going to take his time. He's going to get the ball. He's going to get rid of it. And I mean, it's just again, it's just baffling. Sort of the lack of urgency and the lack of spatial awareness of where you are on the pitch. You're on the edge of your box. As soon as he took that because it was like two poor touches before he lost the
Yeah,
ball. As soon
yeah.
as that first poor touch was done, he should just cleared it. I don't care if it's gone into the stand, if it's gone out for a corner, because you can deal with that.
Well,
They
can I
can't score from a throw. They can't score from a corner. Just get out. I don't care where it goes.
let me ask you something real quick? So Andre Blake was noticeably injured, right? He wasn't taking any free kicks or any goal kicks, and I think he also did the same for his national team when he was banged up in that match. So I was watching the game on television, and Danny, the commentator, was like, aren't why isn't Minnesota pressing against Blake? He's just rolling the ball out to Glessens or Jack Elliott, or he's just excuse me, he's just passing it short to them. Why aren't they being pressured? You never saw any sort of offensive pressure from Minnesota when Blake had the ball. They
Yeah,
just kind of let him feed it in, and so be it. Now, I'm going to also ask you a question about Leon. So the thing with Jose Martinez is that when he is under pressure, he is able to avoid having the ball taken away from him for the most part. He obviously gets too careless. My concern with Leon Flock is that if he is being pressured while he's closer to the net at the 6, I don't feel confident he's going to be able to keep the ball away from anybody else. Like, he
I
may be
mean,
able to pass it away quickly. I just don't think he can defend the ball from an attacking player. Do you
I,
agree with
th-
that?
I think it depends what you're thinking of. Because I mean, like in those sort of like instances, Leon's going to get rid of the ball. He's going to get rid of it, even if he's under pressure. He's going to pull it out for a throw. He's going to pull it up the pitch, which is probably what you should do if you're in those sort of situations or areas. Or again, you keep it simple, you pass it away. But that's what Jose doesn't do. I mean, 70% of what Jose does is luck. I mean, like if Jose lost half, I mean, obviously he's actually very good on the ball. But I mean, like the amount of risks he does take on the edge, of the box, is just it's so high risk. I mean, obviously mistakes are always bound to happen. And I think again, it's frustrating that it happened on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think if you look through the course of the season when Jose has lost the ball in stupid areas, it's cost the Union massive results. Obviously, against Club America in the Champions League when they're only 1-0 down, potentially they were sort of in control of the second half. They just took the wind out of them. Obviously, in Minnesota, the game against NYCFC earlier in the
Yep.
season where he lost the ball and then in reaction, sort of like elbowed the guy in the head for no reason. I mean, like, it
Eric
just
mentions here, please stop shooting from distance. That's true,
honestly,
and he also has one offensive turnover every single game because he just shoots it over the net.
I'm gonna be honest. I don't know why any of the other midfielders don't do that. And honestly, it sometimes doesn't actually anger me when he does do it. When like honestly, if he'd have done that on Wednesday night when the Union were against 10 men and he had a pot shot, I wouldn't have actually minded that because it looked like someone was actually trying to want to score. None
Right.
of these Union players actually get the ball from 20, 30 yards, apart from Klesnes, and it says, fuck it, I'm going to have a go. I'm going to have a shot at goal. They don't. They pussyfoot around it. They go short. Sometimes you just need one of those players just to go, screw it, I'm going to have a go at goal, and I'm going to see if this goalkeeper's ready to make the save.
I think what the
Um,
problem is his timing of it. Like when they are building up an offensive attack, sometimes he just does it when it's not needed. So I think that's what the frustration is from a lot of fans that if you do it once in a while, that's fine. But I think the fact that he does it once a match, even when it's not needed, that's and the problem is it's not even close. Like he's had one shot on net. Most of the shots go over the net.
yeah,
So if he was at least hitting the target every single time, I was like, okay, he's at least getting it to the keeper's hands. He's sending that thing to the Delaware River every single time. So it's not like it's actually beneficial in that regard. Um, but if someone like Ali doesn't have the leg strength that I've seen recently to do this, Flock probably won't even hit the target. So really, besides Jamiro, you don't really have a midfielder who can
no.
shoot as accurately as I guess maybe
But
a forward, because I wouldn't say Jose is
yeah.
accurate with his shot. Um,
But again, it limits what the team can do in attack
yes, it does.
when they can't shoot from distance. I mean, you see so many teams. I mean, teams that's the Union. Even then, I mean, they might not get the shot on target. They might be an easy save, but it's just about testing the goalkeeper and seeing where they are and actually showing some intent. Because I mean, if the Union had done that against Minnesota in the last 10 minutes, and I don't know if Jack McGlynn took the ball from 30 yards and had a shot and it went wide or whatever, I wouldn't have minded because I mean, no one else was having a shot. Obviously,
Yeah,
Kai had that pot shot with his right foot. I didn't mind that. Obviously, it got deflected and nothing came of it. I didn't mind that. Someone was actually looking to score instead of dilly dallying around the edge of the box trying to find the perfect area to cross the ball to one man in the box, which is Shabirko. Um, Obviously, looking at the second goal the Union conceded,
yeah,
again, it was just a lack of complete awareness. I think it was a very similar one to Jose, where actually Jose almost lost the ball before Bizo did. Don't know if you
yes.
realise that.
Jose almost lost the ball. He passed to Mbaizo, and then Mbaizo shoots it back. Both goals also Glessens fell in some way. Because Glessens was relatively in position on the first goal. He slips, the ball goes through. The second, the
Yeah.
same thing happened. I think he gets kind of caught off guard when Bizo kind of just taps it back to him. He
Yeah.
slips, and then the whole freaking thing opens up for Minnesota.
No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, it's just again, it was such a frustrating goal, and I think I don't know whether Bizo thought he had plenty of time because he saw, um, what's his name? Because he saw Jose, play with such a lack of urgency when he made the pass, which I mean could have easily been intercepted. But
Yeah.
I mean, like, it was just such a, I don't know how to describe it. It was so like lackadaisical, and it was just such a poor pass, and sort of the lack of awareness again. Just to stand there and just she obviously Klasner's. I'm not going to moan about Klasner's falling over because people fall over. People slip all the time. It
And they said
happens,
it
and
was
obviously,
raining the entire night, which
yeah,
doesn't help his cause. No, but I
no,
mean, at the same time, it's like, is it just bad luck that these two goals happen in that regard? Sure, but I think both of these instances were caused by a stupid mistake. So you almost create your own luck in that sense. Glessens would not have fallen if the people before him had made a better decision.
yeah,
And the same can be said for the third time. Actually, Glessens is involved in the third goal as well. So Kai gets brought down in the box. Glessens is running towards the ball, and then Kai pokes it towards Glessens when he wasn't expecting, and you can see the ball shoot past him.
yeah,
It's just careless.
yeah,
It's another moment where Glessens is in position to make the play, or at least be close to the play, and his teammate does something that then causes this huge chain of effects. And Andre Blake actually saved the first shot on that, but then it goes to the other side of the post, and the
yeah.
guy's left unmarked, and Mbai's was standing like 5 yards behind him, doing whatever he was doing. Um, and we've never seen this many mental lapses in a game. That's what I think was most bothersome to me, is that we've never seen it this consistent over 90 minutes. Once every 90 minutes, yeah, we kind of have gotten used to that, but not this many times.
No, and again, it was just so frustrating to see. I mean, obviously, I think the third goal obviously was probably. I think I don't think it was the most frustrating. I think it was more of a you're watching the game. It's sort of like that's the sort of night it's been all night. It's just that sort
Yeah.
of luck is what's happened, and obviously, um, it's just. I mean, obviously, it's just a lack of communication between the two. If Kai goes my ball, Jakub doesn't have to go towards the ball because neither of them make the call. They
Yeah.
both feel inclined to get to the ball just to avoid, just in case both of them leave or whatever, and they've both obviously gone for the same ball. And I think obviously having played the game before, it happens. I mean, those sort of things happen. It's fine. But again, that the sort of lack of awareness from two players that you'd think in the sort of areas of the pitch that they are, and bear in mind they were both surrounded by players. To have that sort of lack of awareness and urgency, it's so frustrating. And then to see it, especially from Jose Martinez, consistently around those sort of areas of the pitch, is so frustrating. And I don't know. Obviously, Jim, as obviously his national team coach of Venezuela, uses him as a more wide player
He's
because
him as a
Jose,
wide player, yeah.
yeah, because Jose can run with the ball, he can make runs across the pitch, and he can do he can do plenty of things. He can run across the pitch. He can obviously beat a man. I don't know why Jim doesn't move him higher up the pitch because he's obviously we know Jose's a liability at times. He's a very risky player. The higher he is at the pitch, the less likely his mistake or him losing the ball is going to cost you. And I think maybe that should be something looking forward. I know Leon Flack's not the most talented or gifted player in terms of
Yeah, I'd say so. I don't know if you saw one of his early crosses in the beginning of the match. He was going on the left side of the field, and I think Casper was the one who was kind of going to the inside of the box, and his cross just goes right to Tyler Miller in the
yeah,
goal. Like there's no, it's almost like he doesn't know what to do, so he just kind of shoots it in there and hopes that it finds somebody. There never seems to be any direction to his shot. Like, okay, I can see
no,
where he was trying to go with it. It just seems like he's just trying to get in there and see what happens. And that's,
no,
again, why I was kind of happy to see McGlynn come in when he did, because McGlynn came in for Flock, which put McGlynn on the left side of the diamond, which I was fine with because um, it gave you
playmaker.
that playmaker that you were missing on that side of the field. But I mean, I guess in terms of playmaker, we're kind of segue off to that with Daniel Gasdak. So Daniel had his best match as a Philadelphia Union player, hands
Yeah,
down. Um, I would say the previous match he looked solid, but this is the one match you kind of had a feeling that something was going to finally happen, click for him, and it did. The first goal where the Union gave up the first goal, they come right down the field maybe 3 minutes later, or whatever it was. Jamiro settles the ball perfectly in the box, finds Daniel, who was about maybe 20 some yards out, and he just puts a perfect. It wasn't a hard shot, just a perfectly placed ball right over Tyler Miller, and boom, it's tied 1-1.
Yeah.
Um, how was your reaction once you saw that moment go through?
I mean, also, I was obviously I was delighted with the sort of the way the move had ended. Obviously, it was a good for the Union to win the ball high at the pitch, and then great awareness from Jamiro to quickly lay off the Gasdag, and again good awareness from him to notice that he sort of was in the position where he could try and curl it first time towards the top corner. And it was perfect execution and a great finish. And obviously that is the talent, and that is what we know Daniel has. And I think it was you that covered his press conference after the game,
Yeah,
which said where he said sort of like the Hungarian league's a lot less
the speed of the game.
the
Yeah.
speed of the game and the
Hmm.
quality of the game is considerably less in comparison to the MLS.
Yes.
And so I think obviously he's needed time to adjust. I think he's probably one of those. Obviously, that he came with a high expectation, but I think he's
Mhm.
probably one of those more. Perhaps he is one of Ernest Tanner's sort of like project players where they're going to take time to grow, they're going to adjust to the league and things like that, and they're going to grow into a sort of player that the Union want. Maybe he ends up being one of those players, but I know
Yeah, I
obviously the
mean,
price tag and the hype has obviously accelerated that, and people have wanted to see an all-star player out of him from the off.
and
But
that's and
realistically, he's not.
and he's also played a lot of soccer so far this year. It's
Yeah,
not like he's completely fresh. He's already played previously in the Hungarian league. That comes here, has to learn the language better, has to learn the system, has to learn the speed of the game, as he mentioned. So, hearing that from him does give me some more patience with Daniel. Like,
yeah,
okay, maybe there's more to this than we're seeing. Maybe it's just him not playing well enough. Maybe he does need to learn to keep up to the pace like that. So it was good. It was good in that regard to hear that, and it made me feel confident moving forward that maybe he's finally his found his place on this roster. And we've talked
yeah,
about this in previous episodes. Where does he fit in? In what formation does he fit in? I thought in this particular formation, obviously it worked out for him.
yeah,
And the second goal was a bit fluky. I know we were talking about fluke goals and weird instances. So what people aren't going to remember as much about Daniel Gazdag's second goal is what led up to that goal. So Jack Elliott is going down the field. He's probably about 35, 40 yards out. He sees Miller's off his line about 5 or 6 yards. So he just kind of does a soft, high flying shot towards the net.
yeah.
For whatever reason, Miller doesn't read it properly, and he has to push it out of bounds for a corner kick. The ball wasn't going into the goal. It was probably about 3 yards
No,
to the left of the goal. But it's that mental lapse from Miller that allows the corner kick to occur. The corner kick is perfectly placed off Bedoy's head, and then Daniel Gazdag has the easiest goal he'll ever score in his
no,
entire
yeah.
life.
He's done well to obviously beat the offside trap and be on the line after Bedoy's obviously headed the ball to just literally pop in. I mean, again, it was like a real poacher's sort of goal, really, where
Yep.
you're there in the right place at the right time. And also, I think that's again that could potentially help the Union in the future if they are short in attack. They can potentially say trust Daniel to be alongside Kasper Jabirko, alongside Sergio Santos if they need him to be. If you continue to show that sort of like that killer and poaching instinct. But again, I think it was huge for him to, you know, be I don't know, just to get those goals. I mean, it's the
The
confidence for
confidence,
him
yeah.
just to get those goals.
It's almost a relief for him because the first goal he had of the season was a penalty kick.
Yeah,
So it doesn't have the same confidence building feel to it because you were just placed there and you were given the opportunity rather than you earning the opportunity, which is why I was very happy that the first goal was as impressive and as difficult as it was because
as it was, yeah.
if he only scored one goal that whole night and it was that little tap in with his head, I would not feel like he had the same confidence as he does now with that
Yeah,
first goal being so well played. And he even said they worked on it in training as well in the press
that's what we
conference.
want to hear, yeah.
So it's like, okay, I'm working on it. I'm building up to it. The moment came up to me. I took advantage of it. And it's almost as if everything finally fell into place for that one moment. So that, as a fan, gives me a lot of hope, especially with Sergio Santos being so, especially with Cory Burke being out for the foreseeable future. That's huge. They need Daniel to be, if not a goal scorer, a playmaker. And if he's finally caught up to speed, that's massive.
Yeah, absolutely. I think again, obviously, it depends on the sort of lineup that the Union have in terms of sort of like in terms of the players around them, obviously. Because if he's obviously, I think obviously if he's got a player like Jimmy Montero next to him, and then he's got Casper just in front, he's got players he can feed off, he can feed the ball to. Whereas if we've seen it beforehand, where he's had to play up front as a striker again, well, he's going to be limited with the players around him and limited in space and the time he has to get on the ball. And sometimes we've seen Casper up front with Cory Burke, and there's a lack of pace and for him to to slip these little balls in behind the defence and to, do you know what I mean? I think when there's more technically gifted footballers around him and there's more pace around him, that's where we see him at his best. We saw him at his best against Toronto, obviously when Sergio was awesome. He got him behind a few times, and
Yep.
Gasdak was able to take advantage of their lack of pace and obviously the lack of pace in attack to put balls through and behind the defence. I think that's where he will shine the most, is when he's got more players around him to help him feed off the ball and help him create more space for himself, because then there'll be attention paid to players like Jimmy Montero, Casper Burke, Cory Burke, Sergio Santos. Those sort of players will then garner and attach more attention, thus allowing him to drift off into these pockets of space on his own to create, essentially. But I think that will be huge going forward if the Union can continue to execute like him and positionally and sort of in terms of the game plan as they did against Minnesota. So hopefully they can do it again against a similar team to how they play in terms of Minnesota against Nashville, who are again they're a solid team. They want to sit back. They don't want to lose any points. They don't want to concede goals. So again, there will be pockets of space around the box for hopefully for Daniel to get on the ball, to find little spaces for Casper, whether it's Kai Wagner to get into, or even just to have a shot himself. I think I'd quite like to see him have a go at goal at some point in the future in a similar fashion to Jose Martinez, even if it just go 20 yards over the bar.
Now, we'll segue now to the Nashville preview. One of the biggest concerns of the season was a Nashville game earlier this year. We saw what happened, and it goes right back to a mental lapse. The Union went to Nashville. Was it in May or June? I believe it was. I can't remember right now what month it might have been. It might have been in July. I lost track at this point. But they go into Nashville, very difficult place to play, as we've seen so far this year. And within the first 2 minutes, CJ Sapong, the infamous Union forward, sneaks in behind the defensive backs and puts one in. And we said this after the Nashville game. I thought he could have had 3 goals that night.
Yeah.
So the big concern now is, yes, they're missing one of their key pieces because of the yellow card accumulation in Mokhtar, but you still have a dangerous squad, especially with CJ coming back to Philly, which he's going to get both round of applause, maybe some boos here or there, but you have to worry about his scoring ability, especially in a big moment like this, because wouldn't that just be the most fitting Union thing ever, is that you have a chance to take second place and CJ Sapong, a former Union player, buries you. What are you looking for the most in terms of this match compared to what we saw a couple months ago against Nashville?
I don't really know. I mean, obviously, I think again, I think the urgency of the team and the way that they've really stepped their game up after being knocked out the CONCACAF Champions League. I think that lit a fire in them because they knew that they weren't playing well. They were struggling. I think now that they sort of saw their season, sort of essentially on the line now, I think that might have been the wake-up call. Okay, the honeymoon period's over. We haven't just got the Champions League to rely to fall back onto now. We're outside the playoffs. We haven't won a game in X amount of time. We've been poor. I think Jim's probably drilled that into the team as well and said, like, you guys really need to step up here. And
so one thing, I'll stop you right there real quick. So if I'm looking back on this match, so it was in July. It was a 1-0 final score. CJ Sapong scored in the second minute. Again, I think it could have been easily 2-0, 3-0. The lineup in this particular evening was a bit different than what we're used to. And if you remember correctly as well, and Daniel was asked this afterwards at the press conference, Daniel was playing at the 8 on the left side next to Flock. So it was the usual back 4. It was Gasdak, Flock, Bedoya, Montero, Casper, and Burke. So you have one player that is not going to be there that was there last time in Burke. I guess Martinez was on suspension or maybe international duty. I'm not sure where he was at this particular match. Oh no, he came off the bench. Jose Martinez. So you're not going into Nashville with the same formation you had previously. And obviously, Gasdak isn't meant to be an 8, so you know he's not going to be in that position. So you're really going to be going into this game with a different formation and a different lineup than you played with him the first time. So that gives me some hope, some
Yeah,
promise. I'm not going to see a carbon copy of what I've already seen. And additionally, like I said, Mokhtar's going to be missing this match, and
it's gonna be huge.
he's up top usually right behind CJ. So think about from their standpoint, one of their playmakers is gone, and now our formation is different. So, knowing what you know now off the facts I just laid out, does that give you more confidence for them hosting Nashville?
Um, and obviously, it makes Nashville less of a threat. Obviously, with Matar out, he's such a talented player in terms of what he can do. He's obviously been their key man this year, and I think he's been their key man for the last couple of years in terms of not just goal scoring, but just creating chances and using his pace to full effect of you know hurting teams. He's scored 14 goals in the league this year already, and I mean heading towards the playoffs. Because I mean they are going to have 2 or 3 games in the playoffs.
Yeah.
It's not sugarcoat things, and it's going to be a huge. Um,
Wait, you want to hear something
yeah,
funny? So you
hit
know
me.
how typically with ESPN or they have the last five, the form of the team for the last 5 matches. The last 5 matches, Nashville has tied each match in the last 5 matches. They have not won.
Oh, really?
And it looks like 6 matches. They won one versus Columbus, zeros against Nashville and NYCFC, 2-2 against Orlando, zeros against Nashville, and then they beat Miami. The last win they had was September 22nd. They haven't won a game in a month.
Yeah.
That for me, that's kind of shocking. Now them being within reach of second place makes a lot more sense, and I didn't even
Yeah.
realize that till just now. They have won 2 games since September 11th. That was 1-0 against Nashville. That was
No, Montreal,
five.
sorry.
I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. Against Montreal, and it was 5-1 against Miami. They lost to Toronto in Toronto. Since then, like I said, Chicago, Orlando, NYCFC, DC United, and Columbus. Um, they drew for each of those matches. What's more alarming for them is that they've only scored 1 goal in the last 3 matches. That was
Yeah.
against Columbus this past weekend, and they were down as well. Columbus had scored in the 75th minute, and then the guy who we've been talking about already, Hani Mokhtar, scored in the 77th minute.
Yeah.
So you're missing the one player who's scored for you in the last 3 matches.
It's going to put a lot of pressure on everyone else to step up and
It is.
replace what he obviously brings. Again, it's not just the goals; it's the chances he makes. Sort of the fact how quick and pacey and skillful he is. It puts defenders on high alert. It makes teams sit back so they don't get caught by him on the counter attack. And so again, I think that obviously it might allow the Union to perhaps be a bit more free in the way they attack the game, knowing that they probably, hopefully, fingers crossed, won't be countered on as of against a player that obviously is very talented and has the ability to take the ball like deep up the pit, deep in his own half and stretch the game and things like that. So I think it's going to be a huge thing for the Union, and obviously. Again, they're going to hopefully the Union as well going to be at full strength. Maybe even obviously even if Sergio Santos isn't in the team, in terms of the starting 11, he might come off the bench, add a bit of pace if they need a goal, if they need to close the game out. But I think there's one thing that we can all agree upon, and we all know what's going to happen,
Yeah.
and that is Darvo will not be taking
Dava's
off
not
his
playing. He's going to
Darvo
be
will
on the
not be taking off
bench.
his substitute stuff.
He's not even going to play. He's going to jog around on the sideline. He's not going to play. Because why would he? Obviously, he's not doing something right because even Fontana saw the field over Davo. So I don't know what the deal is with him. I think what the writing on the wall shows that something's going on at training to not bring him on. If you're missing 2 of your forwards and your transfer forward still can't see the field, that's a bigger problem. And that goes back to Tanner. That does. It
Yeah,
ultimately goes to him.
exactly. I think it's a weird. Obviously, that's a frustrating transfer, and obviously, clearly, he's not good enough to feature in the team. He hasn't shown enough to actually, break into the team. And no disrespect to the player himself, but I mean, it's not as if he's been prolific in Brazil either. It's not like he's been playing loads and loads of games in Brazil. Joined Corinthians, he's only played 7 times.
Yeah.
And he's obviously still a young player, so evidently Jim has a weird one. Obviously, I think he's coming at the wrong time of the season, where at this point you need experienced players
Yeah.
and players that are natural goal scorers. Are going to score goals for you, as opposed to bringing a guy from the second division of Brazil, which is nowhere near the level of the MLS. No disrespect
And
to it.
and you think too, you see Gasdak improving week by week. So it's just one more person he has to hurdle to see the field.
Yeah,
And then Paxton has been coming into his own as well. Um, from a gambling perspective, the numbers that we have here: Philadelphia at home plus 100, the draw is plus 230, and Nashville is at plus 240. So the Union, of course, as a home team, are favored to win this. But the goal scorers this week, who do you think would be the goal scorer for the Union this week?
I think Casper will get in on the act. I think with how hard, he didn't score against Minnesota, and I don't think he scored against. He didn't score against Orlando. He didn't score in the
No, he didn't score
no
against
Orlando.
Orlando.
I might have said
No, what was the
Orlando.
match before? You mean
Who am I
Montreal?
thinking of? Montreal. Sorry.
Montreal.
Obviously, he didn't score
Yeah,
against. What did I said? Orlando. Didn't score against
yeah.
Montreal. I
He's gone a
think
little
did he score
cold.
against Cincinnati? He obviously scored against Cincinnati, but I
Mhm.
think again people just need to look at how hard he's worked
Yeah.
in terms even against Columbus, how hard he's working for the team and how much he's running for the cause and how
Yeah.
like he's doing so much for this team right now, and it sort of goes under the radar. Like when he does get on the ball in good positions at the pitch, he doesn't lose the ball. His silky footwork allows him to maneuver in and out of tight positions, to, spread the game around and things like that. So again, he deserves so much credit for how on his, for
Well,
not just his goal scoring, but for the work he's putting into the team. And obviously, Jim actually spoke about his Casper's fitness this season and how
mhm.
hard he has worked and
Yeah.
for the team and the cause and just non-stop running. The fact he's still able to play at this point in the season, um, and to be playing 110% still was absolutely massive from the Union's main striker. And I think Jim Curtin was
And,
massively full of praise for him in his press
and
conference.
his health. Think of his health as well. Casper
Yeah,
has not been hurt from knock on wood from I don't think maybe one match. He might have gotten a little banged up. And Eric brings a good point. It's concerning because Ernest has had that magical, uh, I guess solution to bringing in players. We see with Kai Wagner. You can argue
yeah,
Casper and all et cetera. These players have been brought in the last couple of years who have really made a huge contribution. Now you have really only Gasdag as being this season's, absolute, well, maybe not Gasdag. I would say Flock rather. Flock being the player who's made the most impact. Gasdag now
yeah.
becoming kind of hopefully living up to that expectation. But and when you go back to Casper and for the anytime goal scorer on FanDuel, he's at plus 160. So he's the favorite to score in this match. And so for some reason, and I cannot explain this, Cory Burke is at plus 270. And
Yeah.
he's the third highest Union player over Quinn Sullivan. And Anthony Fontana and Elsinio are also above Paxton Aronson and from anytime goal scorer. Somehow Elsinio made the cut into this gambling world. And even
Yeah.
Aurelio Collin is at plus 850. So
Really?
yes.
Right,
So
he's gonna get his moment, don't worry.
Aurelio Collin is at plus 850 while Leon Flock is at plus 1000 to score a goal. So if you're a betting person, obviously Colin is due for a goal.
He's due for more than a minute. Obviously, that's
Yeah,
crazy.
that is crazy. But
That's
anyway,
crazy.
we'll wrap up the show in a second with oh wait, here we go. Eric says, I'm putting my money on Ray Gaddis coming out of retirement and finally scoring. The joke is if Ray Gaddis scores, we riot. And I was telling someone on Twitter, if Jose Martinez scores a banger, we riot because I'm just waiting for that moment to finally happen. But anyway, sorry. Before we before we sign off, what's the final prediction for the score for you for Nashville?
Uh, I'm gonna go confident. I'm gonna go positive. I'm gonna say 2-0 Union.
Two
Casper,
nothing.
Casper, and yeah, Casper will get both goals.
Casper's going to have a brace,
Yeah.
and it's going to be a Union 2-0 victory to put us in second place. Okay. I am going to be, you know what, Dave? I'm going to one up you here. I'm going to say 3-0 Union. I'm going big today. I have a good feeling. After I saw what I saw on those stats, I feel very confident now. I'm going to go 3-0 Union. I think it's going to be just a blowout win. And I'm going to say Jack Elliott is going to score one of those goals.
Jack Elliott on the score sheet.
Jack
I like
Elliott.
it.
Jack Elliott's
Man,
going
I
to score.
don't know. I just got a good feeling about this game. I mean,
I got a feeling about it, though.
perhaps we shouldn't. I mean, perhaps we shouldn't, considering their recent performance against Nashville. But I mean, I've just got a very good feeling they might actually come away with a very good result here.
I do
Obviously, with
too.
Casper.
And go ahead. Go ahead.
So Casper Berko just scored the first goal and Union to win 2-0, 25-1.
Oh, there you go. Don't tempt me, Dave. You know how I am with my gambling. Yeah. Eric says Curtin gets a team with the 3-1. If they play that the last couple games, 1-1 draw. Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the things we had to look at and give Curtin some credit for. Curtin has gotten a lot of heat this year. And before we get to the sponsors, we should say they lose to Club America. They come back and they beat. It was NYC. You begin this epic run that we've been on. This huge unbeaten streak. Every time this team has gone down, you can say Atlanta United, you can say Chicago Fire. Anytime this team has had their back against the wall, they have rose to the occasion to put a performance together. So
yeah,
I feel confident that this team will do that again. But
hopefully, yeah.
Without further ado, let's get to the sponsors. Dave, I'll take the lead here. I have them in front of me anyway. First up, we have our number one sponsor right here, Manscaped. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code AATBirds at manscaped.com. Great supply, including the Lawnmower 4.0 at manscaped.com. Next up, we have OddsJam, the number one software platform for sportsbook bandits, the Arbitrage Calculator, and more, so that way you can never lose a bet again. Sign up today at oddsjam.com via AATBirds. Next up is a pretty cool one, another free one as well. Check out Statement Games for a fun new way to fantasy sports entertainment. You can win gift cards and prizes, and as I mentioned, it is free. I did already. It's pretty cool. New way. I think the whole premise is that you have like 10 statements that you have to select being accurate for the game.
Yeah.
It's really a unique way to kind of almost like a prop bet. You think of it that way. Yeah. Next up is Lottery Watches, our newest sponsor. Lottery.com. Use code ATBirds for 10% off at checkout. Link right there below. Very nice selection of watches. Christmas is 2 months away. I already know Dave is going to get me a watch. So, cat's out of the bag there. And then lastly, Across the Pitch and all the network gear, Burning Bridges, Chips and Dish, the Wednesday show, my new show, dropping tomorrow, Barrera's Bucket. Well, no, it's not dropping tomorrow. It's been 3 episodes of Barrera's Bucket, but tomorrow's episode is I interviewed Tristan Freeman from Fansided's Busting Bracket. So a very big guest. We killed it. Talk about Pittsburgh Panthers basketball. So check that out tomorrow. It's dropping. And then that's about it. Dave?
I like it.
Dupe,
go Union, and go Sixers.
That's right.